The Battle of White Plains, fought on October 28, 1776, was a critical engagement in the American Revolutionary War's New York and New Jersey campaigns. Although overshadowed by more famous battles, such as Long Island and Trenton, White Plains played a crucial role in the strategic development of the conflict. It represented the fledgling Continental Army's ongoing struggle to maintain cohesion and effectiveness in the face of vastly superior British forces, led by General William Howe. The battle also exemplified the larger patterns of maneuver, withdrawal, and attrition that would define much of Washington's military strategy during the Revolutionary War. Following the devastating American defeat at the Battle of Long Island in late August 1776, General George Washington successfully withdrew his army from Brooklyn Heights across the East River to Manhattan, retaining the core of the Continental Army. Despite British naval superiority, Washington conducted a masterful nighttime evacuation, avoiding destruction. However, New York City remained under imminent threat. By mid-September, the British had landed again and captured the city with minimal resistance. Washington and his generals had a difficult task: defend a vast and strategically important region with limited manpower and resources. Following the fall of New York, Washington's troops moved northward on Manhattan Island. He positioned his forces at Harlem Heights, where he scored a minor but morale-boosting victory on September 16th. Nonetheless, General Howe persisted in his efforts to destroy the Continental Army and bring the rebellion to an end. Howe's strategic goal remained unchanged. He wanted to cut off Washington's retreat, crush the Continental Army in the field, and demoralize the revolutionaries. Throughout October, Washington and Howe made a series of cautious moves. Washington gradually withdrew his army northward from Manhattan to the mainland of Westchester County, avoiding a decisive battle that could have destroyed his forces. Recognizing Westchester's strategic importance, particularly the routes connecting New England and the Hudson River Valley, Washington sought to defend the area while avoiding entrapment. He established a defensive position near the village of White Plains, located along the Bronx River about 25 miles north of Manhattan. The area had elevated terrain, including Chatterton's Hill. Meanwhile, Howe attempted to outflank Washington once again. On October 12th, Howe landed around 4,000 troops at Throgs Neck in the Bronx, intending to cut off Washington's retreat. However, American forces had blocked the narrow causeways that connected the peninsula to the mainland, forcing Howe to re-embark and land farther north at Pell's Point on October 18. There, he encountered stiff resistance from a smaller force led by Colonel John Glover, whose delaying tactics gave Washington valuable time to reposition his army at White Plains. By October 23rd, Washington had gathered approximately 14,000 troops in the area, though only about half were seasoned and prepared for battle. The remainder consisted of local militia and ill-equipped soldiers. Washington's main line ran north-south, with Chatterton's Hill on the western flank of the position. From this elevated position, the Americans could observe and protect their right flank along the Bronx River. Washington fortified his positions, bracing for the inevitable British advance. The British force led by General Howe numbered around 13,000 men, including regulars, Hessian auxiliaries, and cavalry. Skirmishes and reconnaissance patrols took place daily as the two armies moved nearby. On October 28th, Howe decided to launch an assault on Washington's right flank, focusing on Chatterton's Hill, which he believed was weakly held and poorly defended. Capturing the hill would give the British a commanding position over the American lines, forcing Washington to retreat deeper inland. The battle began late in the morning. British and Hessian troops, led by Generals Alexander Leslie and Wilhelm von Knyphausen, began to advance on the American positions. The initial British advance involved crossing the Bronx River under fire, which was a dangerous and challenging operation. As the British advanced, the Americans, positioned on Chatterton's Hill and led by Colonel Joseph Reed, fired volleys that slowed their progress. To support their crossing, the British deployed artillery and began bombarding the American positions. Despite their numerical superiority, British troops encountered stiff resistance. At one point, American militia launched a counterattack, temporarily repelling British forces. However, the British and Hessians regrouped and launched another assault. Von Knyphausen's Hessian Grenadiers and General Leslie's brigade coordinated a flanking maneuver, attacking the hill from various angles. The American defenders fought valiantly but were eventually overwhelmed. The militia units began to falter under intense musket and cannon fire. Colonel Reed was unable to defend his position in the absence of adequate reinforcements. Following a brief but intense battle, the Americans abandoned Chatterton's Hill and retreated across the Bronx River to the main American lines. The British took the hill and immediately began entrenching, leveraging the high ground to dominate the battlefield. Despite the loss of Chatterton's Hill, the majority of the Continental Army remained intact. After assessing the situation, Washington decided not to risk a general engagement. It began withdrawing its army farther north and west toward the highlands of New York, eventually crossing the Hudson River into New Jersey. The British did not pursue aggressively, allowing Washington to retreat once more and regroup. The Battle of White Plains had fewer casualties than other engagements. The Americans lost approximately 150 to 300 people, including those killed, wounded, and captured. The British losses were estimated at around 250. Although the British won the battle tactically, General Howe's strategic goal of destroying or forcing the Continental Army to surrender was not met. Several prominent figures played pivotal roles in the conflict. On the American side, General George Washington once again demonstrated his ability to keep his army together through strategic withdrawals. His decision to fortify White Plains rather than hold Manhattan was part of a larger strategy to avoid a decisive defeat while defending critical territory. Colonel John Glover, who had previously distinguished himself at Pell's Point, continued to serve admirably, providing crucial resistance and rearguard actions that slowed the British advance. Other American commanders, including Generals William Heath and Nathanael Greene, assisted Washington in organizing defensive works and managing troop movements throughout the campaign. On the British side, General William Howe once more showed his preference for flanking maneuvers and methodical tactics. While effective on the battlefield, his cautious approach frequently allowed Washington to escape. General Alexander Leslie and General Knyphausen assaulted Chatterton's Hill with professionalism and discipline, securing a critical terrain feature that contributed to the tactical British victory. The Battle of White Plains revealed a great deal about the nature of the war and the challenges that both sides faced. For the Americans, it demonstrated the difficulty of defending territory against a better equipped and more experienced adversary. After White Plains, Washington refined his strategy of avoiding decisive battles while preserving the army. The emphasis shifted from fixed positions to mobile warfare, which used geography and maneuver to counter British advantages. White Plains represented another opportunity for the British to defeat Washington, but it fell short. They drove the Americans from their positions and declared victory, but they did not destroy the Continental Army or put an end to the rebellion. Throughout the war, British commanders struggled to capitalize on battlefield victories. The battle also had a significant impact on the overall campaign. After leaving White Plains, Washington divided his forces. Some units were stationed at Fort Washington on Manhattan Island, which Howe quickly attacked and captured in mid-November, seizing nearly 3,000 American prisoners. Fort Lee, on the New Jersey side of the Hudson, collapsed shortly thereafter. These setbacks forced Washington to retreat across New Jersey, culminating in the famous crossing of the Delaware River and counterattack at Trenton in December. While the retreat was painful, it allowed Washington to regroup and plan a daring attack that would resurrect the Patriot movement. The experience at White Plains, combined with the subsequent defeats, sharpened Washington's strategic instincts and taught him the value of timing, surprise, and concentration of force. In the long run, the Battle of White Plains fits into the larger story of the war as an example of Washington's leadership and the Continental Army's tenacity. Despite a tactical defeat, the Americans remained unbroken. The campaign highlighted the limitations of British power and the challenges of fighting in hostile territory with limited local support. In terms of historical legacy, the Battle of White Plains is remembered through local monuments and preserved battlefield sites. Although less well known than other battles, it was a pivotal moment in the Revolutionary War's New York campaign. It was the final significant battle in the region before the war shifted to New Jersey and Pennsylvania. The engagement also teaches valuable lessons about military history. It demonstrates the significance of terrain in battle, the risks of underestimating an opponent's ability to retreat and recover, and the complexities of leadership under pressure. Washington's ability to navigate defeat without despair, to maintain unity and morale in the face of adversity, was critical in sustaining the revolutionary cause.